Hello and welcome to Borrow My Belief, a podcast that's designed to inspire you to live from your heart. And today I've got a beautiful guest called Inga who lives from her heart. And I'm really looking forward to this interview and getting to know her better. I've had a bit of a insight into what she does, been on her podcast, and I know that this is going to turn out to be a great episode right here. Hello, Inga.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So, where
Great.
to start? I think probably the best thing to do is introduce yourself and give us that elevator kind of pitch about what it is that you do.
Okay. Right. So my name's Inga Lamb and I am an author and speaker and teacher, essentially. So I've written two books. I've written The Path, which came out 2 days ago, I think, and this is a story of my journey to healing. I suffered with extreme anxiety. About 15 years ago, I began my spiritual awakening, and that sort of catapulted me, as well as the end of my marriage and losing my home, into a state of extreme anxiety. And I spent a long time figuring out how to resolve that in my life. And so it's a 15-year journey. And so the culmination of it really was in 2020 when I trained in shamanism, shamanic healing, which is essentially one of the oldest forms of healing. And it's where most forms of healing have sort of developed from. And from that, I kind of moved into taking that as my stepping stone and then moving into my true purpose. So I also wrote the book The Art of Dying, both of which are available on Amazon. And these books were really about my understanding of the truth about reality and what is not available to us normally, the kind of the insights, the teachings, the knowledge, the understandings that we don't really have unless we actively go and search for them. And so the most recent thing that's happened for me, which I'm really excited about, is I've joined with a good friend of mine and we've created Empower World, which is a platform essentially for learning. And I have written my first course for the platform, which is coming out soon. So, and I have a webinar on the 7th of May, which is kind of a pre-taster of what my course is all about. So, in a really quick nutshell, that's me.
That's amazing. I just want to unpick this a little bit. So you said 15 years ago, and having been on this healing journey myself, I'm just wondering how it looked for you. You said you lost your home and the end of your marriage. It's so similar to me. It sounds like a bit of a mirror, really. But
Okay.
what kind of led to that for you?
What led to the beginning of my awakening? So yeah, I mean, essentially, I think what really happened was there was huge amounts of trauma in my life, huge amounts of trauma, and really unresolved childhood issues, unresolved ancestral issues as well. Um, and I think what really, I mean, it had always been there. There'd always been this underlying anxiety, but I developed anorexia. I used to drink too much. I found coping mechanisms. And I think when I fell pregnant with my first daughter, I think the real beginning of it, which would have been now nearly 20 years ago, that was when it really sparked, because I began to have panic attacks, and I was diagnosed with postnatal depression and what have you. But actually, then I had my second daughter, and after that, things really went haywire. Um, and what I now realize was going on was I was having an awakening. I was waking up to the fact that I wasn't living my true purpose. And it's so funny because often, you know, when people talk about making massive changes in your life, they talk about the difficulties that they had because everyone around them was really contrary to what they were doing. When I trained in shamanism, I was so scared about telling people what I'd done. And actually, because I thought they were going to think I was a complete fraud. And most of my friends were like, well, yeah, obviously. And I was like, really? Because how come you knew? Because I didn't know this is what I was supposed to be doing with my life. So I think everything, I now look back on everything that happened with immense gratitude, and especially to my ex-husband, because what I had to go through in order to realize myself was immense, and he was one of the greatest teachers for me during that. And we now have the most extraordinary relationship, and I'm just so blessed for that, and for my children as well, who really have taught me so much. I think we learn so much from children when we don't think that we know better.
You know, your story is very similar to mine. I'm so intrigued with what you're saying because it sounds almost identical. Like,
That's so funny.
great that you've got that relationship with your ex-husband. And what comes to mind now is your children. I know that my children, we've been on quite the journey together, and they're 24 and 27, and I've got a grandson. And I watch every day as things unfold. And I just want to put in here for anybody listening who might be at the start of this journey, when you're talking about thankfulness, what I'm understanding and perceiving, you can correct me, is there have been ups and downs, highs and lows, and being thankful for it all. And that certainly accounts for me and my children and what we've been through. But it's not all being sunshine and roses, put it that way. And we've come to a beautiful understanding. And it's, again, what you said, awakening, it's the path of awakening. And it can be really sore, and there can be a lot of grief. And when you're as far down as I am, and I'm guessing you become grateful for all of it, including the parts that felt like hell, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing to say to anyone who is suffering or struggling or at the beginning of this journey or going through massive change or loss or really anything. I know it probably sounds sort of like easy to say, but truly and honestly, on the other end of all of this, there are not only superpowers that we gain through trauma when we complete the trauma cycle. I always think it's a bit like mining for diamonds. You know, in order to mine for diamonds, not only do you have to have complete faith that there is actually something under the rock that you're hammering away at, you're also in really uncomfortable, dirty, horrible, you know, circumstances for a long period of time, and then you find the diamonds. And I think that when we can actually re-evaluate trauma and see it like that, every single thing that we experience has on the other side of it a superpower. And we learn so much if we're open to. So yeah, so to anyone who is going through anything, you know, just know that it is truly on the other side of it, there is a superpower of some description.
Yeah,
There really is.
definitely. And I'm wondering about your book, The Art of Dying. Is that about that process?
So the art of dying, it's really interesting because I didn't know this when I wrote it. I actually wrote it. My father was very ill a year and a half ago, and he was given a couple of days to live. And as you know, he's ill again. But he didn't die. But I was sitting by his hospital bed, and I wrote it in a space of about 3 weeks. And I think what it was a culmination of all the experiences of death that I'd had in my life, many of which had affected me really deeply, and some of those had been very traumatic. but I hadn't realized. And through the shamanic training and through my own work and through my own journey and the journey of my clients as well, I came to realize that actually death doesn't exist, that it's an illusion. And so it's a very, very short book. But what it is it's actually explaining the nature of reality. So as people who are facing death or people who are grieving know that actually it's actually physically impossible for us to die, in the sense physically, not exactly energetically, shall I say, impossible for us to die. And this is quantum physics, because we are all energy, as Einstein discovered, as the new quantum physicists have discovered. And because energy cannot be destroyed and energy cannot be created, and this is a law in quantum physics as well, whatever has been here from the very beginning of everything is always here. It never, there's nowhere for it to go. And so when I realized this, it was such an extraordinary kind of breakthrough moment, because I thought, and I actually had it when I was really funny. I was walking along the road, and I think people must have thought that I'd actually lost the plot, because I was walking along the road and I had this kind of revelation, and I was looking at the bush and I was going, oh, you've always been here. And I was looking at the tarmac, oh, you've always been here. I mean, I must have looked like a complete and utter, nutcase. But it was the realization that we are in a physical body because we want to experience life. But this isn't who we really are. We are actually so much more than this. We are the part of us that continues to live, and we're always connected to everything, because everything has to be connected. So we never lose anyone. We lose the physical, yes, but we never really lose anyone, and we never lose ourselves. And so I wrote it essentially to help people to understand the truth about reality, and the truth about death as well, just to so as it no longer needs to be something frightening. We can accept it. So
you're debunking the what we've been taught, really, and you're helping people. I'm guessing in the book, I've not read it, but I'm guessing that your intention is to help people with that process.
very much so, very much. I mean, it's to help anybody who has any curiosity about, and because I think so often what we do is we hide it away because we're frightened of it. And so when it actually happens, we're thrown into a state of, oh my goodness, and and I'm never going to see this person again, and this person, maybe maybe didn't die in very good circumstances, and I regret that I didn't say this. And there's all these feelings, or perhaps one's own demise, the terror maybe of coming close to death. And I think that once we realize that death is simply, in the same way, I was listening to this the other day, in the same way that the trees shed their leaves, they don't stress out about shedding their leaves, come the autumn. They're just like, drop, because they know that they will grow new leaves. And we as humans are exactly the same. Because energy can never be created and it can never be destroyed, we have always been here in some form or another. And because we've, I guess, elevated to the highest form of existence really is human, because we're so lucky. We have a brain, we can walk, we can talk, we can we can do all these amazing things. Then we will come back in the human form. Not, I won't come back as Inga, and you won't come back as Joanne, but we will come back. This is the name, the identity, the body. It's just a form for us to experience life, but we continue to exist. And I think once you know that, you can really get on and enjoy life.
See that you really embody that. And what I'm thinking about is my mum passed away in November last year, but I knew for some months before, I just instinctively knew that we were leading up to it. And there are some shamanic kind of teachings that say there's a 9 month leading up to death, like there's a 9 month leading to birth. And I just felt it. And the experience that I had with my mum was, it was sacred. The
Mm.
process that I went through and the connection that I had with her. I mean, she didn't know, but it felt really sacred that time. And I found myself, I actually found myself sitting in a graveyard doing a mantra around that time, a Ganesha mantra with a group, but online. But I ended up going and sitting in a graveyard.
Mm.
Found myself tapping into this perception that we'd lost so much art of tribal ways, in that was sacred that my mum was passing, but I couldn't do much of the sacred things. The same with becoming menstrual cycle ended last year, and it ended on the year that my mum passed away, and all these kind of things that we just get on with in today's society.
Mm. And they're so special. They're such special moments.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I found, well, I managed to honor all of it myself somehow.
Amazing.
I managed to find the space in it. And then when it got near to the end of my mum, I was moving, she was in Scotland and I was moving in England south. And my daughter, she's trained in shamanism, and
Oh wow.
she just come back from Sri Lanka, and no, sorry, from Mexico. And she sat by my mum's side and put her hand on her heart and sang to her and opened a portal for her. And
Amazing.
so beautiful. And my mum, who didn't really show much emotion, sobbed and sobbed and
Oh wow.
I've actually got it on video. It was such a beautiful moment. And I just feel like my mum was in a care home and they were incredible, but we
Mm.
seem to have lost so much of these rites of passage, you know,
Mm.
when puberty, when
Mhm.
girls' period starts, oh, so many things. I'm thinking
Yeah,
things.
yeah. I think that's such an important thing that you're saying, because they are rites of passage. They're windows. You know, they're really, really important moments. And I would just like to honor, if I may, you know, what you said. Actually, it's made me feel quite emotional what you said about your mum, because you know, she was able to let go of the earthly stuff
Yeah.
before she left. And that, you know, how beautiful, you know, it's never ever ever too late to free ourselves of the illusion, you know, that this is it, you know, while we still have breath in our body, we're still alive, you know. And I think that's just the gift that you were able to offer her and that she was able to accept is so beautiful.
Well, what's really beautiful is I couldn't, but my daughter could.
Yeah,
I went back the day after and tried to get that connection, and I couldn't get it with her.
no,
Just incredible that I could witness it between her and her granddaughter.
yes, yes, yes.
There's so much beauty in it all. And my daughter's actually interested in the art of dying, in more of a ego kind of death kind of way with shaman.
Mm,
So, because it's constant, isn't it? You're talking about your awakening. For me, that whole experience has been about shedding different aspects of my personality and letting go of. The more I clear the trauma, the more the true me comes through, the more I feel fulfilled. And whilst I don't, I mean, all my stuff's about manifestation. And while my learning originally was, this is 34 years journey, and my learning originally was manifesting that 5-bedroom house and this and that and the other, but I did it from a place of kind of commercialism and some consumerism, and this is what I think I should want. And then all that fell apart on my internal system, realizing I wasn't living my truth.
mm,
Then I got to a point where I didn't have a home and everything like that, and started building again manifestation in a different way, but in a fulfilling way. And
mm,
what I found was the more that I went and healed the trauma and the different, again, I had a very traumatic childhood. There's similarities here. The more I did that, the more I allowed things to come into me that I wanted to come into me, rather than that than thinking it has to be the 5-bedroom house. The more relaxed, the more peaceful, the more fulfilled, the more I enjoyed life. That's what happened with me. Was it
mm.
with you?
Do you know, it's so funny because it was exactly the same. We had this huge villa in Italy, because I was living in Italy at the time. We had this massive car that I was so embarrassed to drive because it was humongous. You know, bottles of wine on the table that were 60 you know, we had the whole thing, and my nails were always manicured, my toes were always pedicured. I was perfect, the children were perfect, my marriage was perfect. And it was like, you know, and no one no one could see it because I hid it so well, but I was cracking on every level. I'd really just like to honor the amazing doctor that I had in Italy, actually, because she was the most incredible woman. She always turned up late, and she was in Italy, the system was a bit different, but you just turn up, you don't need to make an appointment. And so she'd turn up late, and whoever was in there, she'd see them, and she'd see them for however long they needed. And I was in there almost every day, beside myself, thinking I was dying of this or that or the other. And she eventually said to me, I want you to go and do this, meet this woman who I'm working with at the moment, because I'm training in Bach flower remedies. And I went to meet this woman, and she was saying to me, oh, in a past life, I lived in England. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, you're a real weirdo. Because at that point, I had no knowledge whatsoever of any of this. Anyway, she did my Bach flower remedies. And that was the beginning, really, of my kind of movement into something that was slightly different from the conventional. But yes, it was exactly the same. And we had to sell the house. We sold the house at the very last minute because Italy had gone into the economic crisis. By the grace of God, this man arrived from Milan, this lawyer who was just driving around and bought our house. I mean, it really was extraordinary. But I had to get out, and I left with actually the money from the house stuffed in my boots as I walked out of the bank, because we were in so much debt and in so much financial trouble. I mean, that's for another podcast. But things were really, really bad. But it was essentially what it was it was me being taken apart, because I just was not living. I wasn't living my truth. I was living a lie. And I guess my soul was saying, you're not going to do this.
That was like me, and it's it. I'm pretty sure over time, because you've launched your course on a platform which will come too soon, and then I'm launching mine after you, and I think we're going to have some really interesting conversation. I'm sure of it. Something that you say quite a lot in your conversation is that you hadn't realized. Said that quite a lot, that you've been going about your life and you hadn't realized. And it sounds to me as though something deeper and beyond you, which is you, obviously, kept coming to you to help you realize, as if it was destined somehow. I've actually got chills when I've said that.
Oh, bless
All
you.
those truth bumps, as if it was destined for you.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. And it's interesting because about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I had my astrology done, my natal chart done. And the astrologer said to me, you were born to be a shaman. and interestingly enough, in my chart, I mean, I don't really know anything about astrology, but I was told that, my journey is with death, death is a hugely important part of my journey. And also in the gene keys, it's said that I must speak about death. I must bring death into the. So yes, you in a nutshell, you're completely right. I had no idea about this, but there was a path, which I think is really important also to say. We don't have to follow our path. I think it's really important that, again, this goes back to the idea of enjoying life. We don't, because we can do it the next time round. I think it's so important that we don't feel, oh, I'm such a bad person because I'm not doing it, or anything like this. But for me, I guess this time round, I really didn't have a choice. That's what it felt like. Maybe the last time rounds, I've been kind of going, yeah, maybe I'll do it next time. I think I got to this time, and it was like, no, you are doing it.
I think also it's important to say, to build on that, because we're quite radical, and my daughter is into the gene keys and all these different things. She's been on this podcast twice, and people keep asking me to bring her back on. Actually, she's
Oh,
really
that's amazing.
But she looked at my astrology last week in more detail, And she turned around to me and said, "Oh my gosh, Mum, you really are a powerhouse, aren't you?" And I knew what she was talking about in that moment because there's a lot of fire in me because I've been shown my path.
Mm.
And I knew that if my astrology didn't look like that, there's no way I could do what I'm being called to do. And you're right, I don't have to. But what I find out is if I don't follow, for me, if I don't follow what my heart's showing me, what my deeper self's showing me, I suffer.
Mm.
So, but usually the suffering's great anyway because that helps burn away some trauma. But I think it's important to say to people, you don't have to be as radical as us. I mean, I didn't have things done to me. Some people end up it's done to them because they need to follow it. Like energetically, it catches up with them, and the husband might leave or the wife or whatever. But I went and methodically destroyed my life, and something inside me knew I needed to. But it don't have to be that. If there's someone with a calling, it can be something really quite simple. Like they want to start doing art because they haven't done art since they were a child. And one of the very first communications I had with you, what stuck out is you actually said that you'd been obsessed over here and you'd been obsessed over there, and you were into the well-rounded life.
Mm. 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 And that I mean, that to me is, yeah, that's what has come out of my life, I think, is that I was very obsessive with things because they were trauma responses, and instead of actually dealing with my trauma, I became, obsessed with food, or obsessed with my weight, or obsessed with being perfect, or obsessed with a man, or I don't know, obsessed with something, overworking. I mean, you name it, obsessed with green smoothies. I've done it. And I think there's a danger in that, in the sense that not all of the time, because sometimes I was doing things that were clearly not good for me, but often in the last 15 years, what I was doing were things that, like, drinking 4 green smoothies in a day, and everybody would be like, wow, you're so healthy and so good. I wasn't, because although I was drinking a green smoothie, I wasn't doing it with the right mindset. It came from a place of fear. And I think that is, that, so what Empower World is all about, the platform that we've created, is actually, what I've realized is that the journey, we all kind of focus often on one thing, one area, finance or love or body or health. And those things are really important, but we're never going to truly find fulfillment until we fulfill every aspect of us. So, learning a language, doing an art course, learning the names of flowers, traveling, it really, crocheting, it really doesn't matter what we do, but there are so many parts of us. And if one of those parts is not getting, anything at all, it's being starved, inevitably you're gonna suffer as a result, or not suffer necessarily, but feel unfulfilled. And so I think it's really important that, alongside, the big players in life, like our health and our well-being and our relationships and our finances and our careers, that we also always make sure that we're adding in all these other aspects, because that's what human life is all about.
Yeah. It's really, there's so much I can say on that. I do the wheel of life with my clients because to see where we're at and keep checking in on it, and all the different areas. But I've had many significant turning points in my life, and one of them actually was when I listened to a video by this guy, Darryl Anka, whose channel's a Bashar. And it was this formula of just following your highest excitement every day. And I just thought, oh, well, do you know what? Why not? And I have a morning practice, and I would ask him that morning practice every single day, what would bring me joy today? And I started to follow this. What would bring me joy today? What would bring me joy today? And he was saying in that video, and then you'll get more joy, the energy of it, the universe, whatever you want to call it, or because you focus there, it'll bring more joy. And I've been on that path about 18 months now, and every day I'm pinching myself going, oh my God, I've got so much joy and and things are still getting done, and I'm still productive, and it's that formula has really worked for me. But on top of that, about 5 years ago, another one was choose love over fear. I had a tattoo to remind me, but I never look at
Oh,
it.
brilliant.
And I do forget. I actually do forget this one, but choose love over fear, because what I've noticed is intention is everything. And when I do something with that underlying energy of fear, it's never works out to the greatest resolution ever. But if I do it with the intention of love, it always does. So
Mm.
those two combined for me, love and joy, have
Mm.
been like a magic formula for my life.
But I think, I mean, I did a video the other day about, in fact, it's actually in my video course as well. I think it's all about how actually the energy that I was speaking about at the beginning of the podcast, you know, everything is energy. That energy is love,
Beautiful.
because love is the only thing that can create. You know, when you look out into the garden and you see, you know, the birds flying by and the bees buzzing and the, you know, the trees, you know, blooming and the sky skying and you know, that's all energy, and it's love in its purest form. But we see, but obviously love, like everything, quite rightly, you know, it has its dark side and its light side. And when we get into the realms of fear, it's still love, because it's still energy. It's just the darker side of that. And I think the real key around all of this work is we have to accept all of it, everybody, you know, because that's the energy. And I think one of the problems that a lot of us struggle with is that we've kind of been taught to try to make life as comfortable as possible. But the way to make life really comfortable is to accept that, you know, there's this other side of ourselves. There's, you know, what most people call the dark side, but I just call, you know, it's just the other side of you. You know, this is one side, this is the other side. It's no more than that. And if I was just walking around like this all the time, I'd look a bit weird. You know? So in order for me to be completely whole, I need to access and have access to and acknowledge all of it. And so it's accepting. And I think once we accept fear, it actually disappears. Once we look at it, it goes away. It doesn't, it only has control over us when we try and push it away. And, you know, I don't want to think about that. I want, you know, and then and then it comes out at the worst possible moment, because it suddenly goes, I'm coming out now. You know, when you're in the middle of a party or something.
Yeah, do you know what? I really love the way you've explained that. And it's funny, it was my birthday yesterday. I had some fear come up around something. And I was with a very, very good friend who I'm really close to, and I mentioned it and we chatted it through. And what I've started to notice recently is if you witness something, it dissipates. And then it becomes irrelevant. But
Absolutely.
instead, we're inclined, because we've given things labels like anger, sadness, fear, is that
Mm.
energy. We're inclined to push it away. But every time I witness this stuff, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually what you're saying about the language. And language is so important. I've taught languages for over 25 years now. I taught English and Italian. And language is just extraordinary, because language is how we actually implement our intention. You know, we have our intention, but it's how we actually make it matter, in the sense that we bring it into this physical existence. And it's so interesting what you're saying, because we talk about, I am scared, you know, I am sad. And by saying I am, we are accepting that as actually being part of us. In Italian, they say, I have fear.
Ooh.
And it's such a completely different thing, because when you have something, you can get rid of it.
Uh,
You know, okay, I have a glass. Now I don't have a glass. You know, it's a very different experience from I am, because when I say I am Inga, I'm embodying this identity. When I say I am scared, you know, I'm embodying it. And so I think it's also really, it's a really good point you made as well, about being aware of our language and what we're actually saying, you know.
yeah, I once had a mentor, and we used to do group sessions and one-to-one, and if anybody said I am, or so say I'm scared or I am angry, he would correct us and say, I have anger arising through me. There's anger
Yeah.
arising in me. I like that way that you've just said that you can give it away.
Yeah. Well, it's an experience, isn't it? It's like I have a car. No, I don't have a car. I have fear. No, I don't have fear. And I think yeah, it's really important. But I think also the other thing about fear is it gets such a bad rap. And again, going back to the into the trauma cycle, it's when, like you say, when you actually, everything is kind and loving, because love essentially is this amazing experience. So when we experience love through fear, it's teaching us something, that the fear is coming up so as we can look at it and go, oh right, okay, you're showing me this. And
Yes.
I believe this is the same with everything, all these things that we deem negative.
Mhm.
If we literally just turn them on their head and said, okay, I'm so grateful to you, thank you so much, I know that everything that is I'm experiencing is happening around me and for me, and I say for me rather than to me, is something that is in my best interests. So what is this fear trying to give me, trying to show me, trying to bring to me? And then when you learn it or you see it, that's when you get the pure form of love. You become like the bees and the birds and the sky. And so there's nothing bad about fear. In fact, it's a great friend, but we just need to acknowledge that.
It's you're talking about alchemy, really. And what the thing that I am always amazed at myself, and I haven't mastered this fully in the moment yet. I've looked at it retrospectively. I wrote about it in my own book, that when these emotions come up, they hijack the brain often, and it feels so frigging real. So what I was afraid about yesterday felt so real to me yesterday, and in that emotion had hijacked. It's the trauma from when I was little. It was actually to do with money, and so it's something that happened when I was little that gave me a perception of money and a certain belief. And something happened yesterday with a message that I got, and it was around money, and it was a circumstance, and I talked it through with my friend, felt the feelings around it. I woke up this morning and it doesn't even feel like it did yesterday. I've got a strategy in place now. This is what I need to do. This is who I need to speak to, and that'll sort that out, and then that won't happen.
Mm,
But
mm,
yeah, yesterday, I mean, thankfully, I'm so far down the road now that I don't go into months worth of panic or days worth of panic or weeks worth of panic. It's more, oh, there's a sensation going on here. I recognize I've got fear. I need to pay attention to this.
yeah, yeah.
It
And
took time to get to that.
yeah, and it's so true, because if you can from a biological point of view, what happens is your bodies go into fear, they go into I'm about to die mode, which obviously we're not, but that's what we're programmed to go into, because our ancestors obviously possibly were about to die. There was a saber-toothed tiger, or there was a flood, or there was some a tribe that was coming to kill them. But we're not, most of the time in modern life, living in those circumstances, but we still respond in the same way. So and what I think is so fascinating is that the moment we fall into stress, anxiety, fear, we remove our ability to be intelligent. We actually lose this, and we go, every part of our body moves into a state of I'm running or I'm fighting. And therefore solutions, opportunities, they all disappear, because we think we're about to die. But all that's happened is we've got a letter from the bank saying, you need to put this money in your account. And it's like, and I think this is so important, because when we can remember it, we go, oh yes, okay, I'm not about to die. I mean, even just literally saying that to yourself can be incredibly powerful. Okay, I'm not about to die. Right, okay, oh, I feel better already. Now let's have a look at this letter. And when we take it like that, then we start to immediately come back into our intelligent, really clever part. And solutions, like you say, instantly solutions appear.
Sorted out really quickly this morning and on the path. And because I've learned now it's all about presence, slowing down, coming to the present moment, getting your nervous system calmed down. But it's took me a long time. I mean, I was 56 yesterday, but
Oh,
I lived,
congratulations.
oh wow. Apparently it's a good number, that one. But I lived 49 years in that cycle,
Mm.
a long time. So I want to touch on your book, The Path. You said it came out yesterday, did you say?
Yes, well, it came out the day before, and then I did all my social media about it yesterday, and I feel so blessed because I've just had the most incredible response, really, really amazing, and I just feel really, really blessed.
There'll be a link in the bio. What, just to give a little bit to the anybody who's listening, what are they to expect with this book? Why would they read it?
Okay, so basically, it's when I began my journey 15 years ago, when things really, really cracked. It was kind of an option. The options were either a bottle of whiskey or something else. And I was on my own with my two daughters. So the bottle of whiskey option just wasn't an option. I had to survive somehow. And I really and honestly felt like I was dying. That's how it actually felt for most of those years. And I was, lying on the floor for hours at a time, couldn't move, with horrific anxiety and everything that came from that. And I started going to a Qigong class, and that kind of spiraled me into really, it was this wonderful doctor who began with the Bach flower remedies. And then I started to sort of look elsewhere, and my interest was piqued. And I began with a Qigong class, and I bought a CD of Himalayan monks chanting, and I'd sit down, put the girls to bed, and I'd sit down on the kitchen floor and listen to this, and my whole body would be shaking. And I was going through all these really weird experiences. And then I discovered hair mineral analysis, and I began that journey. And then green smoothies, and it went on and on and on and on. But what I discovered over 15 years were the most extraordinary tools to help me. And then it developed, obviously, more, and I developed a really, great understanding of nature, reality, etc. But what the path is, it's what the one thing I found so difficult was I didn't, it took so long to get this information. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to look at. I didn't know what to believe. And so what the path is a culmination of all of this information that I discovered and learned over 15 years, because it's never a one size fits all. What worked for me won't necessarily work for everybody else. So I've brought all the knowledge of everything together to kind of create a book to help anyone who is suffering or struggling, or doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to go, is looking for change, to just have this available, so as you can pick and choose from it. It's not sort of like, oh, I've got to follow some rigorous instructions. There is a lifestyle guide in there as well, which is, if you do want to really sort of follow something, and there's a workbook with meditations just to really allow someone to get started. But essentially, when I was at rock bottom, all I wanted was someone to give me a book like The Path. And so that's what The Path is. It's everything that I learned over all those years, with instructions, if you're looking for something a bit more structured.
That sounds brilliant. It's going to be in the link, like I said.
Thank
And
you.
I just keep thinking, I'm glad I'm still going to be in touch with you, because so much of what you say is so similar to my own journey, lying on the floor for hours with anxiety and
Oh, really? Wow.
hours and hours and hours, not being able to move, paralyzed with the depth of emotion. I've
Yeah.
not You're the first person that I've come across who said that on their.
Really? Wow. Okay.
So it has really, yeah, I know we're going to be interacting moving forward. And a bit about your course, because your course is going to be launched. Um, I don't think you've got the date yet, but it's in the coming months. And as soon as you've got the date, we can add the link
Thank you. So I'm doing a webinar on the 7th of May, which is kind of a taster for the course. So that's that has a date, and even if you're watching this after that, it's still available. The webinar will still be available to have in your inbox as a recording. The course it's called the Empowerment Equation, and it's a 23-day course. And the reason it's 23 days is because it takes 21 days for us to embed or change a habit or embed some kind of change that we're looking for in life. But it takes between 66 to 80 days for that to really, really embed in our mind and in our existence. And so I've created it for 23 days, but what I'm really asking people to do is do it 3 times in total, because that way you have 69 days of the course, and that way you have a real chance to really embed the information, and every time you go back and do it, you'll hear new things and you'll learn new things that you didn't have because you're on a different level. So the course the lessons are quite short. They're between 17 and sort of 14 and 20 minutes each. And then every day there's a daily commitment, there's a workbook to do. And the reason I've made them short is because I know that if someone offers me a course and the lessons are only more than about 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. So they're very short, but they're very intensive lessons. And then there's the workbook and the commitment. And we've got a community as well available where you can join up with other people who are doing the course, so as you can be seen and be heard and be celebrated, which I think is so important when we're doing this work. And the course it's all about how to change, and it begins with the understanding of the nature of reality. So understanding, in very simplistic terms, essentially quantum physics. So it's based on science. I'm using science to help people and the kind of the conscious brain and the rational side to know that there is backing to this information. And then we look at the biology. So the quantum biology, which is what's really being sort of pioneered by people like Dr. Bruce Lipton, really moving, into this incredible understanding of how we really work and how our thoughts affect our physical body and all this sort of thing. And then we move through sort of understanding how we're all energy and how we can use energetic patterns. So we don't go back and look at trauma at any point, because I don't believe it's helpful, because our brain doesn't know, time doesn't exist. So our brain doesn't know when we're experiencing that trauma. It thinks we're back in it. So we can re-traumatize ourselves really quite easily. And I speak from considerable experience about this. So we do not go back and look at trauma, but what we do is we work with energetic patterns. And within those energetic patterns, we can shift, recalibrate, move and harmonize. And we do that for this lifetime, we do that for previous energetic patterns, the blueprints, we do that for ancestral. Is this epigenetics? The epigenetics now explains that we can carry 7 generations, and that's what they're aware of at the moment. It's a very new form of science of trauma in our bodies. And so we look at shifting the ancestral, potentially ancestral traumas or ancestral belief systems. We look at belief systems. We learn to work with the 3 conscious minds: the conscious, the subconscious, the superconscious mind, and also how we can actually connect with what it is that we want to bring into reality, and then bring it in from the wave of energy, bring it in so as it actually matters. And then we talk about identity. So I help you to essentially, all of that is really important. But the real key to all of this work is we have to choose to be a different human, a different version, because the version that we've been up until now, if we're suffering, if we're struggling, we need to step out of that. And we can bring parts of it, by all means, the bits that we like, but we leave behind the bits that we don't like in the previous identity. And we simply choose a new identity. So in a nutshell, that is the course, the empowerment equation.
It sounds really, really exciting, and I'm
Thank
looking forward to,
you.
like I said already, I'm looking forward to get to know you more. It's good that you're not just a podcast guest and I don't get to see you again. It's learning more. I have so I've got something going on now in my reality. My computer won't charge and it's saying low battery, so I'm hoping.
Okay. So we're obviously at the end then.
Get the last two questions in. While you've been speaking, I've been trying to sort it out. Something's going on.
Oh, bless you.
So, two questions I always ask. The first one is, it's getting harder to actually ask these questions because the guests I'm getting on are more on the same page as me, and everyone who's on that page thinks that life's always been perfect, always. But I'm just going to keep my tradition going with this question. If you were to go back to any version of you in any time, in quotes, time, and you were to give her a message, I do this actually in daily meditation to dissolve stuff. But if you were to give her a message, what message would you give her? Where would you go?
You mean, are you talking about with the option of previous
version of you? And she was to receive a message from her future self, and she was just giving her something. So, for example, just to let her know she's got this. But it's
yeah.
Thing.
Okay, I would actually go back to me when I was 13. Because when I was 13, I was so feisty, I was so rebellious, I was really true to myself, but it was all confused and messy and angry, and because I was 13. But actually, I look back at that girl, it actually makes me feel emotional, because she was extraordinary. Gosh, it's really making me feel emotional. But she was an extraordinary human being, and she thought that she was disgusting and a disaster and awful. And yeah, I would just like to say to her, you are incredible, and I'm so proud of you for standing and being who you are and standing in your truth no matter what. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Well, I don't know if you know this about me yet, but my speciality is inner child work. So
Okay.
it's really beautiful to hear you say that and to see those emotions. I don't think anybody gets away without having emotions in front of me. So
No.
And then finally, my last question is, if you could only give our viewers one little tip, one piece of advice, one message, obviously they can go and buy the path. They'll have heard everything that you've said today, but out of everything, what message would you like to give?
I think I'd like to say, no matter what anyone has told you, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think is true, you are a perfect creation exactly as you are. And it might sound a bit weird and a bit woo-woo, and I'm sure your brain is going, no, I'm not, because there's this and there's this and there's this. But actually, when you understand the nature of reality, you can be nothing else other than perfect. You are just here having a human experience. And everything that you've done is because you are having a human experience. I don't believe in good and bad, in right and wrong. You're here and you're having a human experience. However, you and everybody else around you is a perfect creation. So
I love that, Inga. It's been such a pleasure having you on this podcast. It really has.
thank you. It's been a real honor to be on here. Thank you so much.
No, I can't make your workshop because I
Oh,
still
that's
with my
don't worry, sign up, because you can